This is Workflow Variables 101. Pretty awesome topic that I'm excited about. But if you saw the description of this and, like it says on the screen, wanted to maybe start saving time or reducing errors or automate easily, then yeah, you're definitely in the right place because that's what we're hoping to show you today and have you walk away with, thinking about and hopefully putting into practice yourself. Before we get into it, though, whether this is your first time or you've been here a few times, we do love to kind of refresh kind of the housekeeping here. We're in the On24 platform for hosting these webinars, so you'll see a number of kind of tools around the screen. There's ways to manipulate the presentation that we've got on screen. You also see some areas for inserting Q&A. We'd love to answer your questions probably closer to the end of today's presentation, but if you want to load up some questions in that Q&A box, in the meantime, if you see something interesting that you want to follow up with us about, or just naturally curious about some of the demonstrations or some of the info you'll see today, yeah, put it right there in that Q&A. That'll make sure it reaches us, the hosts, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. You also see a box with some additional resources. We'll probably hype those up later, but anytime you want to check those out during today's presentation, they're there to be, like they say, additional resources related to today's topic or some next steps for you if you want when we get done talking. That said, though, we also always want to mention, yes, we definitely are recording this. We definitely are going to send it to you afterwards. So, maybe take some notes while you see some of the discussion, some of the demonstrations today, but know that that recording will be headed your way, and you might be able to pick up, some of those steps, some of those tips, and replay them for yourself afterwards. We'll be sending that. In the meantime, I'd love to introduce Joelle. Joelle, how's it going?
Hello, Skylar. It's going good. And hello, everyone. My name's Joel Swanson. I'm the product trainer here. And yeah, I'm really excited to share about today's topic. I feel like this is something that is so useful and can save so much time. So let's get into exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to first cover what exactly are workflow variables, how can they be used, and what can you do with them? And then how you can set up your data to become a workflow variable. And none of that really matters without actually being able to see how you can use them. So we'll see several demos of those workflow variables in action. We'll have 3 total demos for you guys today. And then wrapping up with some questions. So definitely, like Skylar said, put all those questions in that Q&A box, and we'll get to some of those at the end. But before we get there, I want to know, and I'm sure Skylar wants to know too, how you guys experimented with workflow variables in FormAssembly yet. You can just go ahead and click on the screen. Skylar, have you kind of experimented much with workflow variables, or is this all kind of new to you?
I have, but it's also very new to me. I mean, this topic, I lit up when we pulled this one out because there's been some exciting updates kind of in this realm just this year. Some of them may have slipped under people's radar, but discussing this topic before today, I mean, I don't want to, spoiler alert for your demos, but some pretty incredible things you can do with this. But I have a feeling I know, what the answer to this one might be for people.
Okay, let's see. What are people's? Okay, a lot of no, not yet. Then you have definitely come to the right place to see how you can use them and what all they mean and what they can do. So let's get into what are workflow variables and what they actually are. So a workflow variable is basically a small named container that holds one piece of data. That could be something like a respondent's email address, a record ID, or anything else you've collected in the workflow that you want easy access to. Think of it kind of as like a temporary sticky note for your workflow. Imagine you're running a process manually and you jot down a customer's email address on a sticky note. You hand that sticky note to someone on your team who needs to look up a Salesforce record, and then they pass it along to someone else who needs to send an email confirmation. The workflow variable allows you to write that data to it and have the workflow read it and reuse it wherever needed. So this can be something like triggering a connector action, personalizing follow-up, all of that. So why does this matter to you? Workflow variables make the process of reusing that information smoother and more efficient. They ease the passing of data between steps, reduce duplication, and ensure that different systems like Salesforce, Google Drive, or other workflow connectors can all use the same piece of data consistently. Instead of mapping the same field repeatedly or creating redundant lookups, you can store that information once as a variable and reference it wherever needed. So now that we've seen what a workflow variable is, let's talk about how data becomes a workflow variable. So it is important to know that every workflow variable is made up of two key attributes, a name and a value. So the variable name is what identifies the variable inside your workflow. It's the label you use when referencing it in later steps or connectors. For example, you might have a workflow variable called account ID, and that name is the handle or reference your workflow uses to find the data, the value. So the value is the actual piece of information or data stored inside that variable. That could be a string of text, a number, a URL, or even an ID that ties back to a record in another system. So when you're creating a variable, you're really just defining that name-value relationship. And once you understand this basic structure, the next question is, where does that value come from? In FormAssembly, a variable's value can be populated from a few sources. The first is response data. This comes from your respondents. Whatever they enter into your form fields, upload to the form or workflow, or any triggers through connectors or processes that are pulled from your backend processes into the form or into the workflow, sorry. For example, if a respondent types in their email address or you perform a lookup based on their input, that data can be saved as a workflow variable. The second source is prefill parameters. These are values passed into the workflow before it even begins through the URL to open up that workflow and have that data readily available. This lets you start the workflow with context already in place. Again, such as that account ID that ties everything back to the right record. And the third source is return variables. These are created when a connector action completes and returns data back to the workflow. For example, if you have like a lookup action running, you can save the ID from that lookup action as a variable. This combination of structure and data source is what makes workflow variables so powerful. They allow you to give that data a consistent, reusable way to pass and have it referenced throughout the workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. If I just, couldn't help myself, Joel, sorry. Really, these items on the bottom of the screen, if you're following along with us, are super worth keeping in mind as we kind of continue the discussion or as you start to see the demos here. But they were really eye-opening for me, right? Like if you're on one of our legacy products or you really only deal within kind of form creation on FormAssembly, maybe you're very familiar with prefill, right? Like sure, people come in and they enter their address at the start of my form, and I just am able to prefill that response later on throughout an application or something like that. But as you can see on the bottom, like the flexibility and kind of the sort of limits really are, a lot more flexibility, a lot less limits when you get into stuff like these parameters, these return variables, like information that hasn't even necessarily been manually entered by the applicant or the form filler is starting to be pulled from external sources just because maybe we know who you were based on our Salesforce records, right? Like right when we came in, we can start to use that to like aid the form fill experience or automate some steps kind of the workflow here. And likewise with creating some of these return variables, again, not to give too much away of your demo, Joel, but like think about these kind of three things because you're going to see them sort of in action in a second. Hopefully they're maybe new to you or hopefully inspiring some, having some light bulbs go off for you of how you could use it with your team. But also one other call out I'd love to give is, again, I mentioned some people maybe on some older legacy accounts on FormAssembly. If anything you see looks kind of different in the demonstrations we're about to put up on the screen, just know that, yeah, we're working within our workflow builder, right? So if you're not on kind of a team or above plan that has access to our workflows, then that section of form assembly may look new to you. Yeah, I mean, enjoy the ride if you haven't seen it before, but hopefully it's pretty eye opening in terms of its capabilities. And again, pop any questions you have about it in the Q&A. We'd be happy to answer those.
Yes, definitely pop any in there as we're going through the demos, as I go through the demos. And definitely, if you want any clarifications at the end or anything, we can definitely get those questions answered. But for the first demo today, I wanted to start out with launching a workflow with pre-fill parameters. And this is, again, just a way to give your workflow context before it even starts and to really drive home the fact that you can really use this value throughout your entire workflow. So give me a second to share my screen. And okay, here we go. So here is the workflow. So to start out with, I am using a customer interaction form that this entire workflow is going to be accessed from Salesforce. So for my use case is if you have like a salesperson or a CSM or anyone that is accessing Salesforce and wants to log an interaction with a customer, there's a button in Salesforce that they can click, and this button automatically opens the workflow with a pre-filled account ID into the workflow. Now, how you get this first set up is using the workflow properties, and you'd set up these parameter IDs here. And so once you have those parameters, we can then go into this first Salesforce connector. And from this connector, I am using those parameters to look up that account ID. And then moving down here, I am pre-filling, not into the form, I'm pre-filling this account ID into a variable and giving that variable the account ID name. So that then whenever this workflow is loaded, that account ID is automatically saved to this variable and can be used throughout the workflow. And coming down here, I have several more Salesforce connectors that are through this. So the account ID can go into this log interaction Salesforce connector, where I can then have a task created that is using that account ID as that related to field. And I can be sure the account ID is accurate every time. Going on, if a sales rep, CSM, whoever is accessing this form needs to add like a submit a case or submit feedback or anything else, those connectors for Salesforce after it can then just immediately get started with the action for creating a case, using that account ID variable, and creating a feedback record here with referencing the account ID or the contact ID, whichever one's needed, and saving the time because I'm not having to add an additional action prior to each of these actions to get that. It is just the one single action for this connector, and I'm able to reference and pull in all of the data that I need to using those variables. And that just gives you a little bit of an ability to just have that context right from the beginning. You don't have to worry about entering in specifics into the form, making sure everything matches. You know, right from the beginning, everything is good because it automatically matched what is in Salesforce. So then, now that we kind of see how that variable kind of works through prefill, let's kind of move on to the next demo. And for the next demo, I am going to be pulling in Salesforce data directly from Salesforce, not any customer inputs or anything. This is going to be data directly from Salesforce that the respondent has not touched or anything. This is information that we've got prior to them. So this form is going to be a kind of just a lead gen growth kind of form of there's going to be a contact us form on the website. The customers can put in their contact information and submit it. Now, the beauty kind of lies here in this connector. This is just a single connector, but it's going to do a lot of work for us. And when we come into the configuration, it again looks at that lead record, saves that using that email address, and then here in the mapping, I am not doing anything except for mapping the lead status to a variable lead status. And with these, I can come in here And these are my Salesforce fields for that status. And I can save these and have them being pulled in from my Salesforce to be saved to this variable. Same with the lead ID. I can look at the lead ID in Salesforce and pull it into my workflow and save it as a lead ID variable so that the lead ID is being saved. Now, this is where I really like it. The lead status variable, I'm able to actually come down here and go into a task creation. And this task creation, I'm able to save a precondition and say, okay, great. I want to use the variable lead status. And if that lead status value is open, not contacted, then I want this action to run. So I'm able to use that data that was being pulled from Salesforce in that same connector and being able to run through and create this custom task based off of that. Or if I say, okay, great, I want to do a separate task creation off of a separate lead status, I can go through and add another task and another precondition with that lead status and go through using that data from Salesforce that is not entered by the respondent at all. This is data that I have previously collected for that respondent and able to use here in the workflow. And I really just appreciate the ability to have all of that context, all of that data that you have on a respondent, and being able to actually have it be making decisions in your workflow, doing things in your workflow, and customizing how that respondent's path is taking and moving through your workflow. Now, the last one we've got is going to be a demo that I honestly really love this example, and I think is going to highlight the true value of how complex the workflow variables can work and what they can do for you. And so the idea behind it is being able to have a file upload in your workflow, going to Google Drive, pulling and saving the URL from that Google Drive file into your workflow to be able to send that Google Drive URL to other systems. And I've taken it a little bit of a step further. So let me zoom out and I can go through the use case here. So to start off with, we've got an application form that's then going into the Stripe connector, a thank you page, Google Docs, or Google Drive, sorry, Google Sheets, and then Salesforce. So when a respondent comes in, they're able to upload, say, their high school transcript, their college transcript to the form. And before they move on, they get routed through our brand new Stripe workflow connector here. And with this Stripe workflow connector, I'm kind of going through a lot of these, but there's going to be parameters that I can set up here. And with these, I can return the payment status and payment ID as variables as well and save them to my workflow. Now, remember, there's variables here, but then I mentioned the Google Drive specifically. So when we come into this connector here, we can go into the configuration and I'm uploading that high school transcript to my Google Drive. And in the return variables, I'm returning the URL as a variable for the high school transcript. And I'm also going into the college transcript, and I am returning the URL for the college transcript. Now, this one is going to be a conditional field in my form. And we have this precondition up here. So even if there is no college transcript uploaded, I don't have to worry too much about like the causing problems or issues in my systems, because then this variable would just be a null value. There would be nothing there, so it wouldn't cause any issues or errors or anything. So we can be sure that if there is something blank or anything, it's not going to cause issues with the variables. But then kind of moving on to the next connector, I've got a Google Sheets connector. And so with this connector, I really just added it so you could kind of see what all the variables do and how they're uploaded. But here on the configuration and the mapping, I have it mapped so that if I scroll down, the high school transcript variable is being mapped to a column. The college transcript variable is also being mapped to a column. And all the way at the bottom, I'm using those Stripe variables for payment status and payment ID that are also being sent there. And this isn't just through Stripe, and Google Drive, I can then take all of those to Salesforce and send variables to Salesforce. So for this one, I'm just looking up the contact record. And then here in the application record is really where those variables shine. So in this case, I'm not just kind of using the variables. I'm going to go ahead and open our WYSIWYG, the formula editor here. And I can type in like, okay, here's the text, and then pull in the variable name. So I'm just going to delete that real fast so you can see how to add variables here. It's just going to be going to workflow, and then you can see all of those variables that you created here in your workflow. So you can pull in that high school transcript variable to pull in and send to the Salesforce field. I can send in that college transcript. I can even use formulas with the variables. So this formula, I just want to send yes or no if the payment succeeded to my Salesforce. I don't need to have any extra data. So I can just put in a formula at if that payment status equals succeeded, then said yes, they paid the application fee. If it doesn't say succeeded, then it'll say no. And that's kind of a way that you can use those variables to customize the data that is being sent to your systems. Now, let's go ahead and kind of take a peek into that Google Sheets. And you can kind of see what those would look like when you send them through to other systems. So here's a test response I did earlier. We can see here's the high school transcript. Here is, I can click on that link and it'll open the file here in Google. I've got the college transcript. If I click on that link, it'll open in Google. And then the final variables is going to be this payment status and payment ID. So now I can see, okay, great, that Stripe connector did succeed. They did successfully charge the student or respondent. And this payment ID, I can take that to my Stripe and find that exact payment in my Stripe. And that's kind of it for the variables. I know that was kind of a fast one, but if you guys have any questions or anything, let's answer. But we'll finish up with a quick wrap up before we open for questions. Or, sorry, forgot the poll.
Got ahead of us. Yeah. No, we did have one more poll question. So yeah, you saw 3 quick demonstrations there, which I love. Thank you so much, Joanne. I know it can be kind of breathless, and there's so many that we could have done, but we've given you hopefully a few ideas, right, that you can revisit in the recording here. But as you sort of digest those, any of them you're excited about, right? Whether it was launching that workflow with those pre-fill parameters, or pulling in that Salesforce data, or the Google Drive one. I always love kind of seeing that one in action. But maybe some of those inspired you. We're just curious from the audience, any of these use cases you're excited to try with your variables there.
Yes, yeah, and these are just a sample of what they can do. They can really be used any way you want. If you want to create separate formulas to save to variables based off of respondent information, you can save that outputted value from a formula as a variable. You don't necessarily have to use the exact data that's pulled from Salesforce or pulled from Stripe or pulled from Google Drive or any of our other workflow connectors. You can be like, okay, great. Respondent selected this. I want to save this as a variable using a formula. You can save dates, whatever you need to. Really kind of whatever you need, that value is fully customizable.
Yep. What were people up to here? Okay, I was hoping for a mix and we got it, yeah. But yeah, look at that Salesforce data jumping out there.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I really was like, once they really made that fully robust with the Salesforce, I was so excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, we could do so many things with this.
Exactly. And, possibly some longtime viewers can remember, dealing with pulling in some of those kind of custom objects. Used to be, a lot more workarounds involved, maybe a lot more kind of direct manual typing of, kind of variable names and formulas and stuff like that. But hopefully, if it's been a while since you tried something like that, you've seen some of the updated UI, UX there for kind of directly just drop down mapping, certain Salesforce objects to those variables and be able to use them pretty quick. We love to say that phrase, kind of low to no code. And to me, again, there's some of the older solutions for doing this stuff involved a lot of code, and this is pretty low barrier to entry, if you ask me. But that's what I love seeing about it, and people can just get real creative and flexible with it after that. So again, hopefully some light bulbs going off for your own Salesforce instance, or a couple of things you can do with like what you just saw in those demos.
Perfect. Okay, and then before we get into the
Oops.
oh, we're both clicking the button at the same
Yeah,
time.
I'm off. You got
Okay,
it.
perfect. There we go. So before we get into the questions, I just kind of want to do a quick wrap up of a workflow variable is it allows you to store data from your workflow to a name container that can be reused again and again throughout the entire workflow. And that can include your respondent data or specifically any of those workflow connector data. So they're really kind of versatile. And workflow variables are really true enablers of automation. They really let you connect through and send data through different systems seamlessly. They allow you to personalize the experience, that process for each respondent. You don't have to have a one set process for everyone. You can be like, great, really customize it. And then also, the final one is it eliminates repetition and it allows you to have that kind of one set value of here is what it is and going through. You don't have to have a lookup for every single instance. You have to find something or reference something from another workflow step or connector step.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, these points are when I get to go to our FormAssembly events or maybe talk to, certain teams across all kinds of different industries. We sometimes the word automation can almost become like a buzzword, right? But when we see this in action or when people get it plugged in and they see the capabilities there, that's absolutely what we're talking about when we say, the amount of manual work for your team is getting reduced or the number of errors that you see crop up sort of unexpectedly and kind of gumming up the works, those get eliminated. But again, think about, how many of us, maybe now, but definitely in the past, are kind of manually maintaining one of those kind of Google sheets, with our teams, like a form gets filled out. We have the form submission on hand. Now we've got to enter that data kind of somewhere else. And or it's like, okay, we've got a source of truth somewhere else. So that Google sheet, that data needs to be translated over to Salesforce or our CRM somewhere. And sometimes that's being kind of manually carried, or there's one or two sort of additional steps. But you saw that, kind of workflow branching and that, variable creation, carrying that data throughout, using it repeatedly, automatically updating, that Google sheet for you, for example, or automatically updating or pulling from our source of truth, Salesforce, for instance. And hopefully, again, like that's when I see those smiles from those teams. The nonprofit team that's only got a couple people on staff and they're not necessarily easy access to a Salesforce admin, or some of the schools we talk to, right, that, yep, they keep manually entering things in these Google Docs or manually taking it over to Salesforce, but they're the ones that their weeks just got a lot shorter and the kind of number of errors seeing drastically reduced when we introduce features like these. So again, not just a buzzword. We've seen this stuff working great for teams and really hope you can plug it in with yours.
Yeah, definitely hoping that sparks inspiration and everything, but also we can move on to questions. So like if you have kind of that spark of inspiration, but you're not sure how to get it, or if you have questions of like, what does this do? Or could I do this? Let's hear those questions now.
Yeah. I saw one come in early. I think Tracy was asking. She's reflecting and saying, I've got a form that gathers pre-filled data, and she's currently putting in some hidden fields sort of in that form. Maybe this is a good use for variables. Does anything come to mind, Joel, of like possible benefits from doing variables that way instead of hidden fields, or other kind of similar use cases with this?
Yes, yeah. So some of the benefits of having it stored as a variable is it's completely inaccessible from like the submission side. It's only being used in your backend processes. So you don't have to worry if like very edge cases, if like JavaScript or something's disabled, maybe some of those hidden fields get cleared out, or maybe someone accesses the form not using the pre-filled link that pre-fills in information, or something goes wrong with a pre-fill connector. You're able to then have that set parameter of pre-filling it directly in to the variable, and that variable then is set from the beginning, and you're not having to worry about, okay, great, like let me pre-fill it into the form and then use it. I don't have to have that step. I just automatically save it, and I don't have to later have a lot of those extra steps that can come sometimes from pre-filling the data into the form. I would say though the biggest one is being able to have it completely excluded though from any submission side. It's all back-end processes would be the biggest benefit of using workflow variables.
Yep, absolutely worth testing out there for sure. You know, seeing how your mileage varies. Some questions come up when you were showing off the Google connector. How robust is that connection? You know, could it maybe this is a high exposure kind of form, or it gets a lot of submissions fairly quickly for a certain business or an organization? You know, could it expect, you know, 100 plus, 200 plus responses, and possibly even within a few minutes there? I imagine they are stress tested for this, but I don't know if you have more insight into that.
Yes, yeah, they are stress tested, so they are perfectly able to take up as many responses as they need to. If the only thing that would be the consideration is if you do have, say, there are some of our customers where they expect like 5,000, 10,000 responses in like an hour, that would be, I would recommend reaching out to our implementation team so you could have a high volume launch where they can work with you to ensure your forms and connectors and workflows and everything is functioning as expected during that high volume launch where you're expecting 5, 10, 15, 20,000 responses in a short time frame. Then that way they're able to allocate some of those extra uses. But if you're looking at like 215 minutes, that's not going to be a problem at all.
No, exactly. Little clarification, when you had that student application form up, you know, someone's asking, would you be able to show or tell us, like, what does the student see, you know, from their end as they're filling it out? And I think that's kind of the beauty of this, right? Is like, these allow these forms, you know, to look and feel very simple, but the sort of back end work, so to speak, a lot's been sort of put in to you know, take that information and use it automatically and use it repeatedly and get it in the right places. Even though it may look a little more complicated when you're building out that full workflow, the form itself or the point of data entry still, you know, pretty simple, which is, I think, what we're all after, right? I think we all know that, you know, the simpler or the better user experiences on your forms, the more accurate, you know, kind of form fills you're going to get, the more you're going to be able to trust your data. But is that right? Like, there's nothing special that really shows up on the front end on the application side.
Yes,
Right?
yeah, no, the form is going to appear exactly as you build it in the form builder. That is going to be what your respondents see. They're going to see no change in their experience with your using workflow variables or the pre-fill parameters or any of those like complex backend processes. I could have added to that workflow with just the one application, conditional steps, approval steps, all of that, and had my process expanded even more so in the workflow. And the respondent would see that submission go through, just enter in their information, click submit, go through the payment page, go to the thank you page, and then they would be done until they have that reach out from like the university or wherever they're applying to be like, hey, thank you for applying. Here is feedback or whatever. That would be the only thing that the respondent would see or have. There would be no change for the respondent with any of this that I did today.
Yep. And in the meantime, again, hopefully we saved ourselves a lot of kind of manual back and forth, you know, between that form fill response and, you know, a Google Sheet or a Salesforce record, stuff like that. So kind of a win-win for sure. Deb's watching the demonstration and then asking if I've got a form that has, you know, repeating sections in the form. That's some of the capabilities of our form builder. Can we use variables with, forms that have those repeating sections?
Yes. So with the repeating sections, what they would do would be just like the repeating actions. So when you repeat an action, it will just create the new variable. So it would be can't remember off the top of my head, but like if you have like a repeatable file upload and you have that action, you'll map just like normal, that repeatable, what happens if it's by workflow or by response or by repeated section. And so based off of what you choose there will affect how the variable acts as well. So if you do workflow, each repeated instance of that would be concatenated into the workflow variable because you have it set up to concatenate all of those repeated instances in the action. If you set it up for each repeated instance, then it would be, I think, like workflow variable name dot one, something like that, and it'll create a new subvariable for each of the repeated instances.
Yeah. And I know for certain that definitely more information on some of the repeat variable stuff and possibly even setting up those repeat sections and forms if you want in our help documentation. Lots of great stuff in there. If you've got a direct search for one or both of those capabilities, you'll be taken to kind of a step-by-step guide if you need it. So go for that. I think you showed off something that maybe they haven't seen before. Chad's asking, is that new Salesforce connector live and available for us to use right now?
Yes, Chad. Yeah, it is definitely live and available. We've had it since April, but we've definitely have made quite a few changes over the summer to it. We've continued to improve it and taking customer suggestions of changes we can do and have really gotten it, I think, now in a very good space and everything. And it absolutely is available. If you are on a Teams plan and you have the Salesforce add-on, you should be able to go to a workflow, and when you click connectors, it'll be right there, easily available in the connector list rather than going through other connectors. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a cool new connector. I love our workflow
That
connectors,
was
just kind
huge
of in
for us
general.
earlier. Yeah, huge for us earlier in 2025. Real big leap, bringing that. I'm biased, but one of the best Salesforce integrations kind of in the market that we've enjoyed with Forms for so long. Being able to bring that and more over to the workflow side. So the Salesforce workflow connector is what you're asking about there. If you're looking through our help documentation or product pages or anything like that, that's what we saw in action today.
Yes.
We
And
can
then
have a rush of questions. Joe, I don't know if you saw one in particular that you're able to jump on.
I did kind of. It was just asking. There was a couple questions asking what other integrations would be available to use workflow variables. So workflow variables are usable within any of our brand new workflow specific connectors. So that would include like our SharePoint connector, our Excel connector, our Google Sheets, our Google Drive, our Salesforce, the Stripe connector, HubSpot, all of those connectors that are workflow specific connectors are able to use those variables. So you can definitely kind of see, and they'll also state in the help documents if they're able to use variables. So if you are using something and you're curious about if it can use a variable or not, check out the documentation or ask our support team. They're always there to help. And if you have specific questions, you can always ask them.
Yeah. I think I saw someone really enjoying your form that you had up there asking, like, is that example available? I don't know if we had these exact ones or something similar to your knowledge kind of in some of our templates, either for forms or existing workflow examples, but maybe not yet. That's a good call out.
Yeah, that is a good call out. I don't think we have anything quite like that in the full setup just yet.
Yeah. If not related to some of the questions I'm seeing again, absolutely, we are sending this recording to everyone. Maybe you're in the future now and you're watching the kind of on demand of this topic. But yeah, take a quick pause on some of those workflow setups you saw. You can see Joelle's setup of where and when she added sort of the form to the workflow, and then some of that logic that was branching off, and then some of the configurations of those steps that she added to, where and when to sort of get that variable set up, so you could use it, repeatedly throughout the workflow. I would definitely zoom in on that. I know we had to move fast today because it's hard to, really show off the capabilities of this in just a few minutes, but that's why I revisit these recordings. So I hope that helps other people too.
Yeah, it definitely was kind of a quick demo run through, but it's kind of was hoping to spark inspiration. And if there's any questions, always more than happy to reiterate any of the steps that I did or completed or anything.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to try to key in with 3 demos and try to get everything clearly covered in like a 20-minute webinar.
This possibly pulls in a few things that we've talked about in recent webinars, but I saw one question, I think it was from Mandy. Is there a way to have a submitted form generate the PDF of the form response, but then that gets uploaded to Google Drive or some repository on our side as well?
Yes, yeah, that is absolutely doable. You would use the create document step, and that would generate a document, and you could then use variable that is created with that to pull and send that value to Google Drive, or even I think you can select that value directly, select that PDF that is generated directly from the send file action in the Google Drive, so that you're able to then be like, okay, great. Here's the PDF that was generated. I want to send that over to my Google Drive.
There you go. Yeah, excellent topic. If you haven't, viewed some of our old webinars or combed through some of the help documentation, I would definitely search, document generation, or some of the stuff we've talked about in recent months, advanced document generation, possibly even, e-signature related to that. Lots of kind of PDFs being shared both internally or if needed with, someone else to sign or have a record of. Lots of capabilities there, but like you said, can also be part of your workflow, part of your automations to get that copy of it sort of saved, in your Google Drive, for sure. We're hitting up on time here. Just a couple things. I know we can't get to every single question or dive into really specific use cases. We do want to do one more kind of call out here if you do have kind of more questions or you're wanting to lean in a little bit more for, kind of more hands-on with this or some other functionality. We definitely realize we showed off, workflow capabilities today, some different connectors that we have available today. So again, if you're on one of those kind of legacy accounts or you don't necessarily have access either to workflows or to some of those, add-on connectors, and you'd love to see that or you'd love to talk to us more about it, this is an absolute shortcut to getting in touch with someone on our team. Perhaps you're not using FormAssembly yet and you'd love to see a demo, a more advanced kind of demo or a more specific to you demo of some of these features. Just let us know in the poll question, or if you're an existing customer and you think you'd love to sort of add that on or talk to us about, some of those capabilities, absolutely, we can get you in touch with an account manager there. But just, hitting on the poll question here will get, again, easy shortcut to, getting to talk to our team shortly after this. Otherwise, when ON24 is kind of done with today's, discussion and wrapped everything up, check the inbox of where you signed up for this webinar from, and that recording will be in there shortly for you to revisit as well. One other call out too, we have that resources section here. If you liked what you saw, we called this Workflow Variables 101. We've got a great continuation on workflows coming up in a early December webinar. For now, we're thinking of it as small workflows, big impact. So you don't necessarily have to have big offshoot, branching logic that takes a whole team and a giant planning session to create in order to really benefit from some of these automations, from some of the capabilities of these workflows. So we kind of scratched the surface today, but that one in December would be a great continuation of this topic and kind of jumping off to more of it. We have that registration link in the resources now, so feel free to join us then. We'd love to see you there as well. And then we've also got kind of a starting place in our help documentation related to workflows there in the resource links as well. If you'd love to start there, read up a little bit on workflows and the basic capabilities of them, and from there kind of hop into other sections related to workflows, variables, anything else you might have heard us talk about today, that link will get you started for sure. That's all for my kind of quick call outs here, Joe. I don't know if you had any like parting words of wisdom or anything you wanted to add to people who got their workflow variables 101 today.
No, I think it was good. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. I do enjoy being able to share all of this knowledge and give you guys ideas to be able to do your own processes better, faster, whatever you need, and giving you the tools to really succeed in your jobs and creating your own workflows. That is one of the things that I love most about my job, is helping other people. So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks so much. And again, hopefully we'll see you in the next training session and be able to, answer or bring up something that really benefits your team in that one and any of them moving forward. Thanks again, everybody. Seriously.